Hello family, it's African Esquire and I'm here with a new video. So this weekend, France won the World Cup and a lot of people are celebrating. Supposedly, and I would not know this personally because the Africans I know are not celebrating France winning, but supposedly a lot of Africans around the world are celebrating France winning over Croatia because France is such a diverse team. Most of the players on the French team, 16 of the 23 actually, are from African countries. And so for some reason, the media wants to highlight that as being some type of sign of progress, some type of thing that we should be celebrating. The whole thing is off base to me because if you know anything about how these sports work, first of all, the reason why the best players of African countries are not in African countries is because whenever they go to these World Cup events, a lot of times what the European teams will do is they'll see that there's a good player playing for Ghana or playing for Senegal or playing for whatever team, and seeing that there's a good player on that team, and that one player might be carrying the whole team, but they'll offer this player a really lucrative deal in order for them to leave their home country, leave their national team, and come play for them. So a lot of things are going on behind the scenes that is basically recruiting these players. And of course, you know, you can't really blame the players because if you were in a situation where a lot of the people in certain African governments are corrupt and there might be cheating the players. I seen a picture, I think it was the Zimbabwe team. They were sleeping on the streets during a World Cup. So whenever you're in that situation, when you're not receiving any funds, you're not receiving stuff to take care of your family, you're probably going to take that deal with the European country. So you can't, you know, necessarily blame that. But just understand that this is what's going on. This is not something like, oh yay, all of our players are over there. I mean, Africa's never won the World Cup. And that is one of the reasons why. But the other reason why is because they, being a colonized society, being a society that doesn't have access to their own resources, because European and American companies and Chinese companies are in Africa sucking up the resources without the people actually benefiting from them. Because of that dynamic, what you have is that a lot of these soccer teams don't have facilities, they don't have the training equipment that other countries have. And so if you don't have these resources, you don't have access to these resources, you're obviously not going to be able to compete to the same degree as someone else. So it has nothing to do with physical ability. I mean, we know that a lot of times African players are the ones that kill it. Serena Williams is the ones that kill it. Look at the NFL, look at the at basketball. Whenever we have access to the equipment to train, we know that we actually do excel. But for that reason, because we don't have access to these things and because the best players are always taken by the European teams, that is the dynamic that we have today. So because of that, now Africans are forced to find someone to root for. And ironically, the team that they chose to root for seems to have been the biggest colonist, not the biggest colonist, the worst colonist, because in all colonialism is wrong. But France is very unapologetic about their colonialism because up until this day, they are still requiring former colonies that are supposed to be independent from France. They're still requiring these colonies to give them taxes, to come to them for permission. In fact, let me read. I'm gonna show a video from Atlantic Black Star, but in addition to the colonial tax, which this video will address, I want to read off just some of the other things that France still does to this day with independent African countries that are supposed to have been independent from France, yet they still enforce these policies. They have automatic confiscation of national reserves, meaning the African countries should deposit their national monetary reserves into a French central bank. France still has the right of first refusal of any natural resource that these countries find. So if you're let's say you're the country of Senegal and you find a really rich oil reserve. Well, before you can go into the market and try to sell that oil, that means that France is the first one that gets to decide whether or not they want it. And if they don't want it, then you're free to go sell it. And of course, that's something horrible because you want to be able to compete. You want to be able to sell. You want to be able to be in the same market as other people have the luxury of being. But for some reason, this policy has been allowed to exist. In addition, you know, they have there's a priority to French interest in companies and public procurement and public bidding, meaning when the government awards contracts to different countries or different companies, French companies get priority with the government's contracts. So again, you're not able to have a competition. There's not anyone that can say, hey, we could do this better for you. We could do this better for you. We could do this better for you. No, you only have one country who you can go to first, and then you're allowed to go and open it up to the world. And then, you know, I'll just list this one. France has the exclusive right to supply military equipment and train country military officers, and they also have the right to pre-deploy troops and intervene militarily in the country to defend France's interests. So these are just some of the policies, and I'm going to play a video right now which talks about the colonial tax, which is probably the most shocking one. So having watched that video, I'm sure that you see that France, or any colonial power, but right now we're talking about France, France is not new to this. This is not the first time that they have benefited from Africans' natural talents or natural resources or the things that really should be used to develop Africa. And again, let me say, sports to me, you know, they're not a revolutionary thing in themselves, meaning someone winning the World Cup is not going to unleash the change off of Africa or going to free Africa. But right now we're talking about an industry that does bring money into certain countries, that does give people the access to certain things. And so the fact that you would celebrate the colonialist winning over your own personal interest, because the same country is notorious for taking from African countries, West African countries in particular, their own former colonies, but even countries that weren't colonized by France. And so this is no thing to celebrate. I'm very curious, as far as mentally and psychologically, why are we, and this is not just Africans, you know, this is not just continental Africans, these are Africans all over the diaspora. Why are we so anxious to be used by our oppressor? And then, not just anxious, why are we so happy when we're used by our oppressor? Why do we celebrate? So, yay, they're benefiting from us. Yay, that we won because they won. No, you didn't win. They won. And understand, they're not going to do anything or reverse anything from you winning them this trophy. So we should stop being so anxious to be a part of something that really has nothing to do with our well-being and having nothing to do with our interests. If anything, we should have enough self-pride to at least just root for African teams that are actually trying to compete fairly with these French teams, because otherwise, why even root for the person or the people who are really mean you no good? So that's really all I have to say about this. We have to really liberate our minds. Sports, again, they're a distraction. There's nothing that's going to change from your team winning. At least there's nothing as far as precedent. However, we have to get this thing out of our mind that says that a couple of people benefiting from colonialism and a couple of people being enriched from it in our culture, of our people who are being enriched from it, means that that means something good for all of us. The ultimate victory would have been for the colonized people on the French team to have not been used and extorted for French interests, especially because they're going to go back to France and live in the same country that is very well known right now for anti-immigrant sentiment in the first place, and anti-African sentiment. So this does nothing to change our reality, and instead it just continues the cycle of France once again being able to get away with using the resources and the goods that other people have naturally. So that's all I have to say, and I will see you all in another video.